Chapter 30. The Jungle. Kent flipped the vent toward the window. Inside the van he was freezing, but every time they turned off the air, the vehicle boiled from the heat outside. Without it, the screen would fog over. The others must have been miserable. On Xander's half of the board, the thermometer was above 35. Kent had learned to read Celsius in his 8 months in Tylersville, but his mind still translated that back in a language he understood. They were closing in on 100 degrees. Even for this part of Guyana, it was sweltering. Just their luck, it was the only day in weeks past without a hint of rain. The weather had been far kinder down in Argentina. The leaves were in full fall colors when they landed in Solhueva, but because of the delay in the mission, there was hardly time to go outside, much less explore Patagonia. That was all the better for Kent. Emma and her brother had spoken nothing but Spanish since leaving the States, and even in their last-minute training, Jordan and Xander didn't need Emma to translate instructions nearly as much as he did. This mission was far more relaxed than the first, even with the other three fully armed and awaiting unexpected ambush. He had been on edge from the moment they left Tylersville for Beijing, but here there was nothing for Kent to do but wait. He almost began to regret his deal with Emma keeping him in the van. At least I don't have to wear their stupid helmet, he weighed. Without the need to blend in, the other three were outfitted in the skin-tight black bodysuits normally used on company missions, topped by the stylized hockey helmet complete with camera, microphone, and visor. Each of them had millions of dollars worth of research technology literally at their fingertips. If they failed to find a single shred of evidence pointing to Johnny, there was none to begin with. The warehouse was located a half-hour inland from Maswa. Kent thought Tylersville was in the middle of nowhere, but this place was unplottable. The entire drive off the highway had been pothole after pothole over freshly wet mud, so turbulent he thought the axle of the van was bound to snap in two. To his bewilderment, not only were they on what had once been a paved road, but it had been used recently enough that none of the trees had regrown to cover the clearing. The trees around them were so thick that Xander had no option to drive off the road. Kent voiced his realization with the others, but the worry abated when the facility came into view. A large chain-link fence surrounded the warehouse, topped with barbed wire and covered with signs in 4 different languages. The gate, however, was thrown open, ajar over the road as though someone had left in a hurry and tossed it closed, not caring if the door reached its true resting place. The same went for the ladder guard on the entrance watchtower, its lights still on despite the complete lack of presence anywhere on the property. They had pulled up at sundown, and as expected, the facility was completely abandoned. Power to the lab had been cut, but its generators were still active, allowing Andrew to throw on the base lights once Jordan had led them through the front doors to the main electrical panel. Thanks to the helmets, Kent and Xander could see everything from the 3 different view screens in front of them. "Anything?" Xander called through the comms. Kent was thankful not to need a speaker in his teeth this time. "Negative," Andrew answered. Emma had surrendered the role of captain as soon as the board had approved the change. "Nothing but the lights," Jordan seconded. "Deader than my..." He paused. "Never mind. Wrong crowd." "You have like 10 different names you could put on the end of that," Emma followed. "None of them are good." Jordan took a hand from his gun and raised it. "I was going to say Pierre." Andrew turned his camera away from the electrical panel, translating, to what must have been his surprise as well as Kent's, Dutch. "Who the hell is Pierre?" he raised. "My fish," Jordan replied nonchalant. "Blue chromis. Died when I was 6. In both Andrew's and Jordan's cameras, Kent could see Emma blush, struggling to stop herself from grinning. "Yeah, it turns out if you feed a fish red Gatorade, it destroys the pH level in their tank. Among other problems." Emma and Andrew turned to each other, nonplussed. "Roll Tide, I guess," Jordan added. At this, Andrew burst out laughing, and Emma covered her mouth to hide what was undoubtedly a smile. Even Xander was grinning, but Kent struggled to find what was so funny about the joke. After Andrew had stopped, a muffled sniffling came through the van, and Kent realized Emma was crying. "What?" Jordan smiled. "I didn't think it was that funny." Emma wiped her eye. "It wasn't," she agreed. Jordan turned to Andrew for support. "So, what did I..." Emma scoffed, staring at the ground before straightening. "You've hardly talked to me in 3 months and now you're leaving," she clarified. Jordan's face froze in a directionless expression, like he was unsure whether to smile or feel sorry about it. Emma held him in her sight for a long pause, then stormed out of the electrical closet and out into the lab. Jordan turned to Andrew. "Okay, now I'm confused," he started. "Jordan," Xander interrupted. He held out his arms again, perplexed. "Do what we came here to do," Andrew instructed. "Take the left." The trio separated in 3 directions from the main hall, with Jordan hung in the left wall and Emma the right, while Andrew went straight ahead into the primary lab floor. The machine space was no bigger than a high school gymnasium, laid out pretty much as expected. 6 giant metal vats stood amidst miles of piping and control panels. Again, as with the light panel, the labels were in Dutch, this time underlined with what Kent assumed to be the same thing, but in Arabic. "You seeing this?" Kent nudged Xander. "Yeah," he nodded slowly. "Andrew, can you get in a little closer? We want to translate. I can read it," Andrew interrupted. "I speak German." He stared at the first tank's label, which the van's computer was scrambling to scan and translate. Right as it finished, Andrew recited, "It's a cryogenic distiller." A chemical number was listed to the right, alongside various hazard symbols. "Liquid nitrogen," Xander read aloud. "I thought Shane said this was a biolab," Andrew noted. "Did you say cryogenic?" Emma added her voice to the mix. "Isn't that what they did to Ted Williams?" Kent turned to Xander. "Who?" "Ted Williams," Andrew interrupted again, climbing to the top of the vat by way of a side ladder. "He was a pitcher for the Red Sox. When he died, his family had his remains frozen in case they ever found a cure for what killed him." Kent rubbed his temple. "But wasn't he already dead?" "It doesn't matter," Xander argued. "Cryonics is a pseudoscience anyway." "It's satanic," Emma echoed. "If that's what this is, let's get our samples and leave. I don't want to think about—" "Andrew, be careful!" Xander scolded. Andrew was hanging well over the edge of the top of the ladder, trying to reach a decompression valve on the opposite side of the vat. "Jordan, go help him," Xander ordered. "Relax," Andrew hissed in rhythm with the escaping gas. "There's no power to the lab. Anything frozen would have dissipated as soon as it died." "You still don't know what's left over in that tank," Xander replied. "Regardless of what the label says, you shouldn't—" "Hey, Xander?" Andrew coughed. "Stop talking, please." Kent watched as Xander's face turned red. "I'd appreciate it if you didn't countermand my orders," he huffed. "Especially when it means caution." Andrew grunted, lifting the vat cover open. "Boom," he joked. "Now we're all dead." Xander's face grew even darker. "That's not funny." Pulling an extendable baton from his mission belt, Andrew lowered it as far as he could reach into the container. "How many labs have you infiltrated for the company?" he teased. Xander gave up several seconds without an answer. "Me too," Andrew continued. "Now let me do my job." Kent felt his own face flush as Xander fell into embarrassed silence. He continued watching Andrew's camera, astonished as the boy reached his hand over the opening and flexed his fingers. "Never mind. No liquids," he issued. "Jordy, you found anything yet?" Kent turned to Jordan's camera. He was looking through an already scattered filing cabinet, pulling out dozens of pages which were formatted like invoice receipts. "Nothing yet," he coughed. "Why is everything in German?" His visor was translating everything on the page, proving Kent's intuition correct. "It's Dutch," Andrew corrected. "They speak it next door in Suriname. Imported workforce, if I had to guess." "Then explain the Arabic," Xander returned, his eyes darting around Jordan's screen. "If your theory's Suriname, shouldn't it be Hindi?" "Oh, good point," Andrew agreed, and Xander turned to Kent with a victorious smirk. "Emma, what about you?" he prodded. Kent turned to her screen, which showed row upon row of pallets stacked high with boxes of uniform size. "Same here," she choked, her eyes darting from side to side, too fast for her visor to register anything crucial. "Slow down," Xander critiqued. "We won't find anything if you're jumping around like that." "Got it," she acknowledged, another victory in Xander's column. "Andrew, what are the other vats?" he raised. "Are they all nitrogen?" "Don't patience and caution go hand in hand?" Andrew teased. He circled around to the next ladder, reading the inscription on the way. "This one's oxygen," he noted. "Seems like your cryo theory's on the right path." Like before, he climbed to the top, depressurized the container, and retrieved a sample. This time he threw his face over the opening and sniffed. "That's oxygen, all right," he breathed, coloring his language. "Holy moly. Can you not get high on the job, please?" Xander criticized. "What's the next one?" Andrew blurred the camera as he shook off the rush, then moved to the third vat. He stared at it for several seconds while the computer joined him, struggling to translate. "This one isn't Dutch," he noticed. Xander turned. "Kent, hyperfocus the search parameters to chemistry terms," he ordered. Kent toyed with the computer. They gave it a few more seconds before conceding 0 results. "That doesn't make any sense," Xander frustrated. Google it, Andrew offered. Maybe it's a brand name. Kent typed the word into the general search. Andrew was partially correct. Plasmabuminoxine, he read aloud. Revolutionary chemical discovery not yet approved by the FDA, yada yada yada. He froze. Amniotic replacement therapy. He turned to Xander, who looked equally confused. Like with babies? Andrew puzzled. What is this, an IVF clinic? Kent continued reading. Has proven to slow cellular degeneration and reduce embryonic health risks beyond that of natural processes. Andrew, what about the other VADs? Xander interrupted. Geneticists believe the chemical could be beneficial to the regulation of gene splicing and editing. Andrew rounded VATs 4 and 5. Adenosine triphosphate, he translated. That's a metabolizer. How the hell do you know that? Emma wondered. It's a long story, Andrew argued, turning to the next vat and translating the 5th label. Pentobarbital? Kent's eyes shot wide. Be careful with that one, he shouted. Andrew froze in place. Xander turned. It's coma gas, he explained. They use that in assisted suicides, too. Don't ask me about it, he communicated with his eyes. It's a long story. What is this place? Emma swallowed, still scanning box after box for any sign of a label. Last one, Andrew circled, taking a wide berth around the 5th vat and moving to the 6th. Anyone care to tell me what blasticol is? Ken could see the papers fall from Jordan's hands as he tripped over something in the office. After a moment's pause staring at the floor, he spoke. His breath was shaking. Yes, but you wouldn't believe me if I told you. What's that supposed to? Andrew returned, but he was interrupted by a piercing shriek through the comms. Emma had found the tracker. A blank white shipping label was tacked to the side of a box. Taped over it, speckled with dried blood, was a small silver needle, next to which was written the word, Outbox. Em? Andrew spun his rifle to his hands. What's going on? He was here, Xander announced. We found his tracker. No, Emma interrupted. No, he wasn't. Xander's eyes narrowed. What are you talking about? He grilled. Whose tracker is that? Emma sounded on the verge of tears again. I mean, he was never here, she stated, pointing to the label. That's not his handwriting. Andrew's head perked. What handwriting? There's a note next to the tracker, Xander announced. It says Outbox. Before Kent even had a chance to put it together, Jordan's hand was rifling through a new stack of papers he had just nabbed from a tray beside the office computer. Within seconds, he dropped all but one of the pages. Guys, he announced. I found something. Kent felt his heartbeat disappear from his body. He'd only occasionally been watching Jordan's camera, but he had seen enough to notice the same as Jordan. Every other invoice had been printed in Dutch, except this one. Holy shit, Xander breathed. It's in Polish. Oh, they have him, Emma hyperventilated. Oh my God, they have him. Emma, come back to the van, Xander instructed. We don't need to panic. How am I not supposed to panic? She screamed, so loud it shook the van. They cut out his tracker and used it to taunt us. Or lure us, Andrew said. Why else would it be in Polish? Xander sighed, almost laughing as he shook his head. You guys can't seriously think Chervinsky has Johnny, he scoffed. The man isn't even in power anymore. Hell, he might not even be alive anymore. Then how do you explain this? Emma shrieked, ripping the label along with the tracker from the box and storming off toward the front doors of the lab. I don't, he admitted, defeated. It's suspicious as all hell, but we came here to look for clues and bring evidence back to Tylersville. We have that. Andrew, too, was storming toward the van, 3 vials filled in his belt with the liquids he was able to pull from the vats. If a sign dropped out of the sky in front of you saying, he's in Poland, would you believe it then? He cursed. Jesus Christ, Xander, use some deductive reasoning. Why else would that be here? Outbox isn't a Polish word, Xander noted. That could have been written by anybody. Besides, Chervinsky isn't even in Poland anymore. They threw him out weeks ago. Why would Johnny still be there if Chervinsky wasn't? The question hung in the air for a long while. If all the signs are pointing to Poland, he continued. He's not in Poland, Jordan interrupted, a nervous energy resonating through his camera. Kent turned to Xander, whose eyes slanted. What do you mean? He returned. Jordan held up the sheet to his eyes, turning to join them at the van. "This receipt," he announced. "It's in Polish," Xander argued, confused. "Yeah," Jordan agreed. 600 gallons of refrigerated blasticol shipping from this lab. In Polish. With Johnny's tracker in English. Again, Xander turned to Kent, perplexed. "I'm not following," he sighed. Jordan held one corner of the page to his visor. "Then why is it shipping to Dubai?" Kent's heartbeat returned to his ears, louder than it had ever sounded before. Jordan went on. "I have a theory you guys are going to hate." When they were all gathered in the van, Jordan took a deep breath. "Emma, let me see the tracker," he requested. She held it out cautiously, but Jordan refused to take it. "Look at your fingers," he said. Emma rolled the needle to her palm and opened her hand, letting them see. Her middle 3 fingers were smudged black. She reacted, apparently not having noticed. The tracker, too, was tarnished. "That's soot," Jordan theorized. "I don't think Johnny was ever here. I think they electrified the tracker, which is why it came back for that split second." Emma looked at him harshly. "Then explain the blood," she questioned. "There was blood on the box with it. Whose is that?" Jordan shrugged. "I'm willing to bet it's still Johnny's," he said, turning to Xander. "You said it yourself. They don't work unless they're connected to their host. If someone imitated Johnny's pulse, it might be enough to activate it." Xander was unconvinced. "For what purpose?" he scowled. "Why would someone drag us all the way here for nothing?" "Because they wanted us to find something," Jordan returned. "Everything about this points back to the embassy." Xander gave a quick laugh, then leaned back in his chair. "You've lost me." "Think about it," Jordan began again. "Who put all of this together? Shane. He was the one who brought the mission to Emma. He's the one that pushed the mission through without Margot. He knows we went on this mission to find Johnny." "But the mission wasn't about Johnny," Andrew followed. "Not officially." "Exactly," Jordan agreed. "We were sent here to find whatever was in the lab." "Okay, so it's an IVF production facility," Xander comprehended. "Like Andrew said, cryogenic chemicals, nutritional supplements, amniotic fluid. Well, explain the coma gas then," Kent spoke up. "And the other thing." "The other thing is the one that worries me," Jordan continued. "And I think that's the one Shane wanted evidence of." He pointed in the direction of their entry road. "They told us the facility was abandoned," he added. "They didn't say how recently. And judging by the state of this place, I think it's safe to assume it was recently, like within the last month or two recently." Jordan turned to each of them in turn. "What else happened in the last month or two?" Andrew spoke up. "Chervinsky." Jordan nodded. "If he's forced out of power, he loses access to national funds and communications with foreign interests, doesn't he?" He held up a stack of documents he had taken from the office. "Every single one of these is addressed to somewhere in the United Arab Emirates. Dubai, Abu Dhabi, Sharjah. Every order in that office was shipped to the Emiratis." The demonym hit Kent like a freight train. Jordan's eyes lit up, seeing Kent's realization. "You remember, don't you?" He grinned. The others turned to Kent. "What?" Xander raised. Kent could feel his heart beating faster. "The ambassador in Beijing," he remembered. "Right before you said the thing about NDAs," Jordan picked up, turning to Xander. "Chemirsky was criticizing the president about his relationship with the Emiratis." "Experimenting on their own slaves," Kent quoted. "Exactly," Jordan grinned. Xander looked bewildered. "How the hell do you remember that?" he asked. "My parents are from Haiti," Jordan reasoned. "Slavery tends to catch my attention." "So what?" Xander puzzled. "Chervinsky was paying the Emiratis to try out IVF on Indians? That doesn't make any sense." Jordan shook his head. "That's not what a blasticle is for," he pronounced. "Embryos develop it organically. There'd be no need to use it in IVF. Well, then what's it for?" Jordan smiled, almost triumphantly. "Dolly the sheep? Bringing back the woolly mammoth? You all laughed at me for doing my research," he defended. "A blasticle is used to accelerate cell separation in cloning." The van fell silent, except for a surprised, disbelieving squeak from Xander. A nonplussed look fell over his face. "You're telling me Shane sent us here to prove human cloning?" he raised, almost laughing. "That's what you got out of this?" "Xander, we know clones exist," Jordan doubled down. "They attacked us at the safe house. Those weren't clones!" Xander shouted. God, Jordan! How stupid do you have to be to buy into this? What about the tracker? Emma piped up. Even if your theory's true, why would Johnny's tracker be here? Jordan threw out his hands. Because somebody planted it. Yeah, obviously somebody planted it, she complained. I think we need to leave. This feels like a trap. Then why hasn't it sprung yet? Jordan voiced. We've been here for over an hour. You don't think we would have been ambushed by now? Emma's face was gray. Well, who else would have planted it? Kent turned to Jordan, half expecting him to name Shane again. Literally anybody, Jordan voiced instead. Think about it. Who would have found his tracker? He took it out at the embassy, so you'd assume it's got to be somebody who worked in Beijing and somehow knew about this place too. Why would they do that? Xander raised, obviously frustrated by how long Jordan's theorizing continued. Why would someone travel halfway around the world just to write us a note? Because I found this in the outbox, Jordan explained, holding up the Polish invoice. Whoever it was wanted to point us toward Dubai. Emma spoke up again. The ambassador, she reasoned. He went missing, didn't he? Oh, I didn't even think about that, Jordan awarded. I mean, he hated Chervinsky. He had all the reason in the world to want this to leak out. But the tracker came online after Chervinsky was out of power, Emma remembered. Why would it matter then? Kent took a deep breath. Because Chervinsky's still alive, he said confidently. The van fell silent again. I'd bet the house that he's being sheltered in Dubai, he added. That's why the invoice is pointing us there. Xander rolled his eyes. Why would you think that? Because I've watched my mother do it for years, he admitted. Criminals stick together. If you can trust someone with one secret, you can trust them with two. The Emiratis were in on the clones with him. They'd be willing to keep him hidden from the ICC too. All right, enough, Xander rallied, standing from his chair. Enough with the clones. Enough with the conspiracies. Stop talking like children and listen to the adult in the room. There's no cloning. The sooner you get that through your head, the sooner you'll stop entertaining yourself with nonsense and understand the reality of what we're sent here to do. He stared around the room, eyeing each of them with intense scrutiny. Our mission was to investigate the warehouse, he stated. Done. End of story. Are you kidding me? Jordan fumed. You can't seriously look at everything we found and come to that as your conclusion. It's the only solid evidence we have, Xander noted. You can spend hours theorizing, but until we send the samples back to Solweva for testing, then there's nothing we have to confirm what this place is. And Johnny's tracker? Emma argued. You think that just teleported halfway around the world and taped itself to the box? Xander gritted his teeth. I'm not saying there isn't more going on here, he defended. Your line about the experiments is a stretch, and I'm not at all giving credence to your stupid clone theory. But I'm not saying there isn't merit to something more realistic. If the ambassador was convinced of it, then maybe that explains how it ended up here, sure. But speculation isn't the same as evidence. We did what we came here to do, and until the embassy says otherwise, our job is done. Well, screw you, Xander! Jordan rose to his feet, ducking his head below the van's ceiling, but still towering above their leader. Shane gave us the green light to chase evidence if it pointed to Johnny. We don't have any evidence, Xander shouted in return. How? Jordan screamed. We know Johnny's in the desert. What more evidence could we have? It's pointing us directly... Hold on, Emma interrupted. She, along with everyone else, looked puzzled. What do you mean we know Johnny's in the desert? Jordan opened his mouth to speak, but froze, suddenly confused. What? What do you mean Johnny's in the desert? Emma repeated. Jordan turned between her and Xander. What do you... You just said, Xander darkened. We know Johnny's in the desert. How do we know that? Jordan's face reddened, as though his train of thought had completely derailed. He started. I don't... He looked down at Kent for help. I don't know, he stated. It just... It feels right. It feels right, Xander laughed. And with that, you've lost all credibility in this argument. We're going home. Emma rose. I'm not going home without Johnny, she yelled. Tough, Xander bullied. I'm not putting us in any more danger than we need to be. We're not going on a wild goose chase without any lead. Xander, Emma complained. That's enough, he said again, definitively. You can't convince me otherwise, and even if you could, the embassy would never go for it either. He turned, walking back to his chair at the front of the van. Just before he could sit, Andrew's voice spoke up, softly confident. It's a good thing they don't need to convince you then, he stated. Only me. Xander shot around, glaring. No. Not your choice, Andrew argued. If you're not coming with, split at the airport in Georgetown. The rest of us are flying to Dubai. All four of them stared at Andrew, stunned. What? A few muttered. You heard me, he doubled. We're going after it right now. You can't just order a new mission, Xander halted. You can't, Andrew boasted. But I can. General privilege, remember? Xander slouched his shoulders. You're really going to pull the rank card right now? The look in Andrew's eyes gave a complete answer. At least one of two things is true, he reasoned. The note is pointing to either Johnny or Chervinsky being alive in the Emirates. He turned to Emma. If we don't find Johnny, then I'm finally going to finish that son of a bitch. Xander's face was red, shaking in disbelief. You can't drag the rest of them halfway across the world with you, he scolded. Of course I can, Andrew bragged. They can consent in transit. So long as everyone's for it, everyone can go. My orders. Xander turned to Jordan, a look of disappointment in his eyes. Except him. Every eye joined him in staring at Jordan, who looked as confused as Andrew. What? They spoke together. Xander took a somber step forward, breathing a pause. He was granted special permission to come here, Xander announced. Given the situation with Margot, he's legally no longer an active member of the company. Jordan's face lost its color. Andrew threw his hand over his forehead. Xander, you can't stop me from... Jordan argued. No, he's right, Andrew interrupted, swearing. Oh, I forgot about that. The rest of you can do whatever idiotic thing you please, Xander fouled. But as of now, my sole mission to this company is getting him and the evidence back to Tylersville without interruption. Jordan looked ready to throw a tantrum. He turned to the others for help. I'm sorry, Jordy, Andrew apologized. There's nothing I can do. He gestured to Kent and Emma. I can justify taking them, he explained. If I so much as move you east of Georgetown, I'll get court-martialed. Jordan's mouth was still open in shock. Tears were welling in his good eye. So this is it then, he choked. I'm just supposed to go back home without anything? Jordan, Emma calmed, reaching a hand to his arm. You've done everything you can. He gritted his teeth. And that's how you're going to remember it, are you? He managed. Doing everything I could. Emma held her breath. A piteous look spread over her face. If you're so dead set on continuing, Xander reasoned, bring it up with the embassy when we return home. At which point both Johnny and Chervinsky could be gone, Andrew argued. I'm going, Emma stated firmly. Jordan, you have to let us go without you. She walked up to Jordan and stared up at his face. I promise I'll get him back, she affirmed. You go take care of Margot. You've done everything you could. Jordan sighed deeper than Kent would have thought possible, then looked to Xander and Andrew before taking a seat against the wall. Fine, he conceded. Drive us back. Xander looked down at Andrew, still with contention. You're really going to do this? He looked to his sister, then back to Xander. I have to, he confirmed. All right, Xander sighed, turning to the others. Buckle up, then. Kent began to turn his seat forward, but Andrew caught his shoulder. Sit in the back, he ordered. I need to make a few calls. Kent stood and traded places, taking the empty seat next to Jordan, who had his hands folded dejectedly in his lap. Andrew spun the chair around and frantically began typing on the console, picking up the van's secure phone as it began ringing. As he put it to his ear, a soft, groggy voice answered. Who is this? Emma, who had taken the seat opposite, perked to attention, as though she'd seen a ghost. Tu hermano, Andrew answered, covering the earpiece so none of them could hear. Habla español. Es más difícil. A half hour later, he hung up the phone and joined them in the back, taking the seat beside Emma. Whatever he had said, she was now bordering on tears again. He put an arm around her, and she rested her head on his shoulder. You shouldn't need to ask, he deferred. We'd both do anything for you. Kent spent the entire journey trying to answer his own single question. At first he thought it was obvious, but the longer he watched Jordan, his face frozen in uncertainty, the more he realized what his actual decision needed to be. Just under 2 hours later, the van pulled up in front of Hagan International. The airport was just starting to wake, the sun still having a few hours left to reach the horizon. Xander parked the vehicle directly against the curb, turning the key to leave it stationary until it was unwittingly towed away. He turned to Andrew, who remained staring intensely out the front windshield. "You can still change your mind," he claimed. "Johnny can wait." Andrew turned, shook his head, then stood to grab his travel bag from one of the storage bins. "No, he can't," he said plainly. "Besides, I've already made arrangements." Jordan, who had been silent up until then, raised his head and spoke in a soft whimper. "Where are you off to?" Andrew answered without raising his head, stripping down to his boxers and taking out a pair of clothes from his bag. "New York," he stated. "Assuming you're going back through Bogota?" "Same as before," Xander answered on Jordan's behalf. "Then back through Buenos Aires." "That's the thing that sucks about third world missions," Andrew regarded. "Too many stops." He buttoned a pair of shorts before tossing Emma's bag to her. Kent kept his eyes on Andrew. "I suppose we'll be home before you," he smiled. "In a way." "Hardly." Jordan tried to return the sympathy. "I've never been to New York." "Well, Kent, then," Andrew noted, tossing another bag in his direction. Jordan's eyes shot to Kent. "What?" Emma and Xander turned too. "He's not coming with us," Emma argued, more judgmentally than she may have meant to. Andrew shrugged. "Of course he is," he stated confidently. "Aren't you, Kent?" "Why would he come with us?" Emma scowled. "He hates Johnny." Andrew shrugged, wrestling a sweatshirt around his shoulders. "That's a shame," he returned, almost sarcastically. "I already bought his ticket." Kent could feel his pulse rising again. He stared at the floor. "Why would you do that?" Xander questioned. "Genuinely, Andrew, have you thought any of this through?" Kent closed his eyes. "Because I'm going," he said loudly. The van fell more silent than it had the entire night. He raised his eyes to Jordan, whose expression was a mix of confused and betrayed. "What's the point in me going home with you?" he wondered aloud. "What good would that do anybody?" Xander rose to his feet. "Kent, you don't have to—" He ignored him completely. "I promised you I'd help you get Johnny back," Kent reasoned, keeping his eyes on Jordan. "I can't do that from Tylersville." He looked up at Andrew. "And if we don't find him, I'll kill Chervinsky myself." He finally turned to Xander. "For Liz's sake." Jordan's eye was filling with tears again, but his face remained stoic, uncertain how to feel. "Kent," he echoed Xander exactly. "You don't have to—" "This is a me thing now," Kent argued. "Let me take care of it." Jordan once again folded his hands in his lap and dropped his head, breaking into pathetic sobs. Kent could only place his own hand on his back in a feeble attempt at comfort. The others remained silent as Jordan let his emotions loose. Minutes later, his tears exhausted and changed out of his mission suit. He led the entire squad out onto the sidewalk, through the front doors and an empty security line, then to a T in the concourse, stopping before a departures board. He turned around, shaking. "Well?" he breathed. Emma dropped her bag and hugged him, her face turning back to the others with a mess of uncertainty. She was obviously still furious with him, but she seemed to register the weight of the moment the same as Kent. "I don't know what else to say," she whispered against his stomach. He shook his head painfully. "Don't say anything," Jordan shrugged. "Just make sure he's safe." She broke away, refusing to look at him. Andrew stepped in, and only now did Kent realize how short he truly was compared to the rest of them. He too gave Jordan a hug, then leaned against his shoulder to whisper something long into his ear. When he stepped back, Jordan stared at him, surprised. Then it was Kent's turn. "I suppose this is it," he offered. "It might be," Jordan replied, his eyes wet again. Kent started, but realized there was no way to say everything he wanted to say. He conceded the promise again. "I'm going to find him. For you." Jordan sniffled, tightening his jaw. "Thank you," he grunted. "You—" He seemed unable to find the right words either. "If this is the last time I ever see you," he added, "I need to ask one more favor." He leaned in close to Kent's ear. "Take care of her for me. Will you?" Kent swallowed hard. "Treat her better than I ever could." Jordan pulled away, a single tear dripping down the line of his scar. He backed off, setting him and Xander apart from the others. Be safe, Xander instructed, still unsure about their leaving. You two, listen to Andrew. He looked down at Andrew. You keep them safe. Andrew gave a sad smirk. Wouldn't plan on anything else. Then Xander and Jordan turned off toward their gate, leaving Kent alone with the Garens to head in the opposite direction. An hour later, they were on a plane headed back to the States. Kent only then realized how tired he was, and with nothing but Jordan on his mind, he set his head back against the seat and fell asleep. The rattling of the wheels on the tarmac shook him violently awake. Andrew was seated next to him, scrolling Twitter, bouncing back and forth between that and what appeared to be a very serious texting conversation with an unknown number. He shook his head and scoffed at every new message. Your brother? Kent inquired. Andrew looked up, suddenly aware that he was surrounded by people. No, he stuttered. Girlfriend, actually. Kent eyed him curiously. Isla? Andrew looked up again, grinning. If I say yes, will you stop staring at my phone? Kent shut his mouth, turning his eyes to the rest of the plane. On Andrew's other side, Emma was curled up against his shoulder, still asleep. It reminded him of how she was with Johnny, an idea which weirded him out the longer he thought about it. They're siblings, you idiot, he scolded himself. Don't be jealous of that. Andrew shook her awake when they had parked at the gate. The trio filed out of the plane and found their place in a massive white hallway, surrounded by American flags. Andrew turned to Kent. Welcome home, he smiled. Kent didn't have the heart to tell him he had never been to JFK before. They passed through customs on their way to the second flight, stopping at a witch halfway between the gates. He kept staring out the airport windows, hoping for a view of the skyline, but he could see nothing through the overcast sky. A few dozen meters from their gate, Kent froze at the appearance of a new advertisement on a nearby screen. Andrew looked up, noticing it too. You ever watch that show? He inquired. Kent kept his eyes on the screen. Dude's a genius, Andrew continued. I only know it from the memes. I'm sure the whole asshole thing is just a gimmick. It sells better, you know? Must be nice getting paid billions just to screw around and swear at people all day. Andrew kept walking, catching up with Emma, who left them behind. Kent continued staring up at the maroon face of his father, grinning down with pathetic amusement. Kent bit his cheek, realizing this was only confirming his decision. Around noon, they boarded onto another plane, this one much larger than the first. He was reminded of the ones they had taken to and from China, and the seriousness of their situation settled over him like a fog. He sat down in the middle chunk of seats beside Andrew, Emma taking a seat alone across the aisle. He considered offering to switch, but she had already tucked herself in for another nap and was out cold. Not exactly tired, Kent checked his phone one final time before scrolling through the plane's movie selection. A Doctor Who Christmas special was frontmost in their catalog. He quickly skipped past it, settling on Need for Speed and settling in as comfortably as he could for a long flight. A few hours later, the film over, Kent resorted to staring at the flight tracker until he could come up with a new idea. Andrew looked over his shoulder. You're just going to raw dog the rest of it? He wondered aloud. Before Kent could answer, Emma, who had woken from her nap, stood to walk up the aisle toward the bathroom. He stared at her until she disappeared around the corner. You know, you shouldn't do what you think she wants you to do just because you like her, Andrew continued. Kent felt his face flush. I don't, he started. I'm not doing this for her. All right? Andrew held up his hands. I'm just saying, speaking from experience, you shouldn't let a girl dictate your decisions. It'll wreck you. Kent turned to Andrew, whose eyes were more sympathetic than he'd expected. I'm doing this because my best friend needs me to, he declared. I don't even like your sister. Andrew almost laughed. Yeah, I don't either, he swerved. She's always been closer with Riley anyways. Might be an age thing, I don't know. He shrugged. If you were blind, you'd think they were twins, how similar they can be sometimes, he continued. They've always been that way. Kent gave a dissatisfied smirk. Can't wait to meet him. Not like that, Andrew backtracked. I actually think you two will get along. He's a lot like you, too. He looked over the seats toward the bathroom. Emma used to be like that, he claimed. If you get her away from Margot, she's not so much of a brat. Ever since we added a fourth kid to the family, she's been a lot harder to deal with. He looked down at his hands on the tray table. She and I used to be pretty close a long time ago, like when we were really little. She used to have this super black hair, like really dark, kind of like yours. And she and I used to do everything together. Feels like I don't even remember Riley back then. But, man, her and I, he smiled. I remember back in Corpus Christi, we used to run circles around our grandparents. There was one day, I think it was just the two of us. We were chasing each other up and down the beach, like throwing sand at each other like it was a snowball. I couldn't keep her in front of me, so I just ran. As far as I could until I couldn't outrun her anymore. And the only escape I had was the water. I wish I had my effect back then. That would have done some serious damage. But I jumped into the water to escape her, and I must have stayed under for like a minute, maybe more. And when I popped back up, I was all turned around facing the Gulf. And all of a sudden, like 20 meters to my left, I just see this floating mass of black hair, just hanging on top of the water. And for the life of me, I thought she'd try to follow me and drown. He grinned even wider. Then I got smoked in the back of the head by another sandball, he concluded. Turns out she'd been waiting for me on the shoreline the whole time, waiting to come back up. Hell of an arm, even then. Kent couldn't help but smile, too. What was the hair in the water? He wondered. Andrew laughed. Just a bunch of seaweed, he explained. Water was so dark that day I thought it was her. He looked back down to his hands. And one day her hair just started to match mine, he remembered. Have no idea where the black came from. Maybe someone on Mom's Cubano side. How old were you guys? Andrew squinted his eyes to think. Gosh, he thought. If she was thrown like that, then she must have been about 4? So I would have been like 7 or 8, I guess? He looked confused. Weird, he said. Feels a lot younger than that. Kent let Andrew sit in reverie for a moment before asking, What happened between you and Riley? The grin soured on Andrew's face. He swallowed. It's a long story. Kent looked back up to the flight tracker. I have about 8.5 hours. Andrew held back a laugh again. It's a long story, he repeated. And it's not my story to share. You can ask him if he's feeling up to it. I'll warn you, chances are probably slim. Kent held still. I guess, Andrew continued, trying to clarify his silence. I guess he and I just don't see eye to eye about some things. He doesn't really want anything to do with me, or Dad. I don't really blame him for leaving, I guess. He looked to Kent, dutifully. Sorry, that doesn't really answer your question. Kent shrugged. It's more than I was expecting. He looked at the flight tracker, then up toward the bathroom again. How'd you know I was going to come with? He wondered aloud. The question had been pulling at him since Georgetown. Andrew smirked. I didn't, he stated plainly. I was fully prepared for it just to be me and Amita after I realized Xander and Jordan couldn't come with. But while I was calling Tylersville and Hadiat, I could see a reflection in the windshield. I knew you were wrestling with something, so I took a chance and made room for you too. Worst you could do is say no. The company isn't going bankrupt over a few $1,000 lost in flight points. Ken sighed. He hadn't realized anyone else had been watching him. Let me ask you this, though, Andrew continued. Why did you agree to come with? Emma said you hate Johnny. You arranged to stay in the van the entire way through Guyana. I don't think you feeling obligated to take Jordan's place is enough to get you to come halfway around the world, alone, with a complete stranger and his bratty sister, who you don't like, to save her weird boyfriend, who you also don't like. Going out on a limb here, but that seems like shitty motivation to get someone to risk their life. Kent actually laughed. You're right, he accepted. You're absolutely right. Emma still wasn't back from the bathroom. All the better, he thought. For some reason, he trusted Andrew more than he ever wanted her to hear. You're wrong when you say I wouldn't do it for Jordan, he clarified. But you're right about there being something more. Kent hadn't even realized the truth until he gave it a voice. Ever since I got here, I felt like an outsider, he explained. Nothing about this place or the system makes any sense to me. I've always felt like I was 2 steps behind everyone else, especially someone like you or your sister. After I broke my leg, I lost the one thing making me apart. At all. The only person who took any notice was Liz, and I guess after Johnny went prude on everyone else for Halloween, Jordan and Margot opened up too, but it was really just Liz and I until China. And then, poof. Andrew nodded sympathetically. Trust me, I've been there. I'm not selling you short, Kent continued. But after Liz was gone, I just felt like there was no point anymore. Granted, my leg was broken again, but I feel like I spent more time in the common room doing absolutely nothing, more than I've ever done a single thing in my life. And one day it clicked that nobody's ever going to pity me for doing nothing. Jordan really sparked it, he added. Seeing how crazy he went over his mom, and then Johnny, and even all that clone stuff. Seeing him be motivated to do whatever it took. He stopped, thinking about the night Jordan had signed the picture in the common room. When he's gone, everyone else might see Jordan for what happened with Margot, but I'm going to see him exactly like he was back at the factory. Willing to do whatever it took, even when he literally had no time left. Kent felt himself getting emotional. What is anyone going to remember about me? Andrew was nodding along intently. If one of us kicks it in Dubai, he smiled, you'll always be the kid who gave everything to help my sister. Kent shook his head. I'm not doing this for her, he reiterated. Or Johnny. You're doing this to prove yourself, Andrew reasoned. To prove you're more than just a name on a roster. Kent nodded softly. I guess. Yeah. I respect the hell out of that, Andrew said. This isn't about anyone but you. Keep it that way. Kent shrugged, not sure what to say next. You know what? Andrew added. Opportunity arises, I'm not hesitating finishing what I was supposed to do in Warsaw. But if you're there with me, I'll let you take the shot. Kent felt his eyebrows narrow. What? No, that's yours, he retreated. I've already... Andrew held up his hand. I've already done all I need to do in this company, he defended. Everything I do until we get back to Wyoming, I'm doing for my sister. I just want him dead. I don't need the promotion. Kent sat back in his seat, suddenly nervous about landing. He had come along to do something exactly like that, but now that Andrew said it out loud, doubt was beginning to creep in. You're not made for these things the way he is, his mind raced, doubting any ability he thought he had. You have no right to be here with them. Andrew was kind to him the rest of the flight east. He was unbelievably open about himself and his experiences, unless they affected others, sharing stories about deactivating nuclear silos in Iran, clearing trees in the Korean DMV, and so many ridiculous and dangerous adventures that at one point Kent started to wonder if any of them were even true. If all were, 2 stars seemed way below what Andrew deserved. By the time they touched down for the final time, Kent felt he had known Andrew for years. He seriously wondered how Emma could favor any other brother over Andrew, and started fearing his impending meeting with Riley, for better or worse. He followed the Garans off the plane when they arrived at the gate, through a concourse that put Tylersville's wealth to shame. Not just the building, but the people themselves were flaunting their fortune every few meters down the hall. Out beyond security, they spotted a man holding a pet leopard on a leash, to which Emma voiced an impossible dream of owning one too, the legality of which did not exactly translate back in Wyoming. Andrew made another phone call just outside the front doors of the airport, announcing their ride was just circling the frontage road. As close as they were, they still had one last frustrating flight backtracking down to Saudi Arabia, where they were to meet with the embassy in Hadiyat and rapidly search for definitive answers in the clues they had uncovered in Guyana. At least this one's private, Kent allowed. All right, I need a pee, Andrew announced, louder than necessary. Me too, Emma followed. When don't you? Andrew taunted, turning to lead them over to the back wall of the baggage claim. When he was 10 meters ahead of them, Emma stopped and turned to Kent. She took a deep breath before staring him hard in the eyes. I know you keep saying you're not doing this for me, she gratified. But that doesn't mean I can't say thank you. He shook his head. You don't need to say thank you. Too bad, she complained. I'm going to. After everything I put you through, I don't deserve you at my back. Kent shrugged, unsure how to answer. Without warning, she hugged him around his middle, tighter than he'd ever been hugged before. Thank you for being the best of us. Leaving him speechless, she turned and walked toward the bathroom, her teal bag bouncing off the bottom of her blue sweatshirt. Kent realized he should probably join the party, and followed a number of men in keffiyehs through the right door. A long line awaited him inside the room. Taking a moment to look into the mirror and breathe once he'd finally finished, he splashed water onto his face, and couldn't help but smile. Andrew was seated on the edge of the nearest baggage carousel, frantically texting away. Kent had to fake a cough to get his attention. Andrew stood, stowing away the phone. "Took you long enough," he teased. "How'd you skip the line?" Andrew pointed to a third door off to the right. "Family bathroom," he grinned. Something, be smarter than the herd." Kent shook his head, looking around the room. "Where's Emma?" "I'm assuming they had a line too," Andrew reasoned. A loud screeching sound pierced around the walls. The pair turned to see another white-robed man struggling to control a falcon, which was avoiding returning to his glove at all costs. Andrew laughed. "It's a different world, man." "You're telling me," Kent noted, watching a pair of black-clad security guards pulling a woman toward the exit. Her hands were tied behind her back with a dark cord, a black bag covering her head. She was struggling, apparently not expecting the arrest. Below her white shirt, her thin legs were doing everything to keep the men from pulling her forward, and Kent registered that it was not a woman at all. At most, a teenage girl. People were staring, but like he and Andrew, no one moved to intervene. Only when she managed to spin around for the quickest moment did he register that she had taken the sweatshirt off and tied it around her waist. It fell to the ground as the men managed to retake control of her arms and orient her back toward the doors. The single word on the shirt landed straight up toward the ceiling for anyone to read. "Rice."